A serial rapist opened his door to 3 strangers offering free gum. He tasted every flavor. He spat into their cups. He smiled at them. He made small talk, and he had absolutely no idea. Those 3 strangers standing in his doorway were undercover detectives. That single piece of chewing gum sitting in a small ceramic ramekin just solved 2 murders from 1980. But he is not the only one who thought he had gotten away with it. Five cases, 5 decades of silence, 5 families who spent years, in some cases their entire lives, waiting for an answer that simply never came. One of them was a mother. Her baby was left crying in a high chair, and the man who took her, he lived under a fake name for 35 years, right among everyone else, until now. July 1980, Everett, Washington, a quiet residential neighborhood on a summer day. 21-year-old Susan Vesey was home alone with her 2 young children, a 3-month-old son and a 20-month-old daughter. Her husband came home to find her tied up with electrical cord, raped, and strangled.
A suspect was finally charged with killing Susan Vesey in 1980. Vesey was found by her husband murdered in their home on Casino Road the day after her 21st birthday. Their 2 kids, a 2-year-old girl and infant boy, were home at the time, but neither was harmed.
Their babies were in the next room, physically unharmed, but their mother was dead on the floor. 2 children, one of them barely 3 months old. And somewhere in that house, a man made the decision to leave them there alive and walk out the door. 4 years later, 4 miles away, June 1984. Firefighters responded to a blaze at 42-year-old Judy Weaver's apartment. When they got inside, they found her hogtied with an extension cord, raped, strangled, and the killer had set the bed on fire to try to destroy the evidence. Both women were mothers of 2. Both were attacked inside their own homes, and for decades, police had no idea these 2 cases were even connected to the same man. The investigation went cold. Judy Weaver's boyfriend died in 1994 as the main suspect in her case. Over the years that followed, her parents, 2 sisters, and 1 brother all died, never knowing who had actually killed her. Her only surviving sibling, Leon Gregory, would later sob openly in court as he remembered his baby sister and the decades his family had carried that unanswered grief.
It changed the course of our lives forever.
I received a call at home that Judy had been killed.
That moment is burned. It's my memory.
I wish I had been able to kill him. My name is Jacqueline O'Brien. I'm the first known victim of Mitchell Gaff.
Then, DNA profiling finally caught up. In 2020, detectives reopened the Weaver case with fresh eyes and new technology. Forensic scientists used specialized software called STR-Mix to separate and identify tiny, degraded traces of unknown DNA recovered from Weaver's bindings. It was painstaking, precise work.
Snohomish County, a big break in a decades-old murder case in Everett to tell you about. Police say DNA evidence has now linked 68-year-old Mitchell Gaff to a second murder.
More than 4 decades after 2 women were murdered in Everett, the man investigators say was responsible phased his victims' loved ones as he learned his fate. Mitchell Gaff pleaded guilty to 2 counts of first-degree murder in 2 cold case killings from the 1980s after DNA evidence linked him to both crimes.
And in November 2023, they plugged that hard-won DNA profile into CODIS, the National DNA Database, and got a hit. Mitchell Gaff, a convicted rapist, already in the system for violently raping 2 teenage sisters in Everett, just 3 months after Judy Weaver's murder. But detectives needed a fresh, confirmed sample. They couldn't rely on the database hit alone. So they came up with a plan, creative and effective. They called it the Gum Ruse. 2 undercover female detectives knocked on Gaff's door wearing gum company t-shirts, claiming to be market researchers. They asked if he'd participate in a taste test. He agreed without hesitation. He sampled flavor, it's up to flavor, cheerful and cooperative, and every single time he spat that gum into their cups, he was handing them his DNA, without a warrant, without a lawyer, without ever understanding what was happening right in front of him.
New details about how investigators used a piece of gum to catch a homicide suspect in a crime from nearly 40 years ago.
Snohomish County judge granted him unconditional release in 2018. He went to Olympia, where police arrested him for Weaver's murder, and he is now held without bail.
Detective Susan Logothetti later told CNN, "I remember watching him spit the first piece of gum into the ramekin and seeing the saliva, and it was very hard for me to contain my excitement." The DNA was a match, and when Logothetti went back to re-examine the 1980 murder of Susan Vesey, she recognized what she described as startling similarities between the two crime scenes. Additional DNA testing confirmed it. Mitchell Gaff had killed both women. 2 murders, 4 years apart, 4 miles apart, and the same man walked away from both of them for over 4 decades. On May 13, 2026, Mitchell Gaff was sentenced to 50 years to life in prison.
Today, a convicted killer who brutally raped his victims was sentenced for his crimes. Before he learned his fate, Mitchell Gaff addressed the judge and told the family and friends of his victims that he was sorry for the pain that he caused.
Families are finally seeing justice after their killer was sentenced to a minimum 50 years in prison.
He will almost certainly die behind bars. In the courtroom, the families of his victims finally got to face him directly. Susan Vesey's son Joshua delivered a victim impact statement that silenced the room. "I was in the same room when the defendant killed my mother. I was found swaddled on her bed. He was 3 months old when it happened. He grew up without her, and now he's a grown man standing in a courtroom telling a killer exactly what he took." Gaff showed very little emotion throughout the sentencing hearing. The only moment he appeared to cry was when he heard his sentence read aloud. That case took 44 years and a piece of chewing gum. But the next one? It took 32 years, and the suspect was 80 years old when they finally put him in handcuffs.
Well, Stockton police have arrested an 80-year-old man in connection to a double homicide in 1994.
Today, we are here to share justice that has been 32 years in the making.
May 23, 1994. Stockton, California. A construction site on Thornton Road. 2 young men, both 23 years old, were found dead. Lawrence Luhr was working as a security guard on duty that night, building toward a career in law enforcement. Eugene Cates had just wrapped up his shift at a nearby Chevron gas station and stopped by the site to visit his childhood best friend. Luhr was found bound, gagged, and shot once in the back of the head. Eugene Cates had been run over by a car. His body was found underneath a chain-link fence. 2 young men, both working toward futures in law enforcement. Killed by a stranger who had no connection to the construction site, no connection to either victim, and no apparent motive that investigators could find.
The victims, Luhr and Cates, were 23 years old. Larry was on duty, working as a security guard at the Spanos Park construction site, and Eugene stopped by to visit him. After a shift, they were both engaged to their fiancés. They had hopes of starting their own families. They were also criminal justice students at the San Joaquin County Delta College with hopes of working in law enforcement.
That randomness, that total absence of any traceable link, is exactly what made this case so extraordinarily difficult to solve. For 32 years, nothing moved. The case sat. Donna Whitlatch, Eugene Cates' sister, said she lost it completely when the murders were first reported. "He was a good kid," she said later. "I'd give my life for him." For 3 decades, she carried the weight of not knowing why. She asked out loud why justice couldn't have arrived sooner.
He's a good guy. I mean, the biggest heart ever. Cooked, cleaned, took care of the kids, and then some. This was not supposed to happen. We all waited for this moment. It's a long time coming, and I hope justice is swift with it, as swift as they took their lives.
Both Lawrence Luhr and Eugene Cates were buried next to each other in the same cemetery. Best friends in life, best friends in death. Then on April 22nd, 2026, the U.S. Marshals Fugitive Task Force located their man. Donald Lee Clark, 80 years old. He was wheeled into a Stockton courtroom in an orange jumpsuit, an elderly man who had spent 32 years living as though nothing had happened. The district attorney confirmed he faces the death penalty. Clark had no connection to the victims, no connection to the construction site, and no apparent reason to have been there that night.
Well, an 80-year-old man is now facing the death penalty for a decades-old cold case out of Stockton. Donald Clark faced a judge for the first time today.
We know that 32 years is an agonizing long time to wait for this day. Justice may have been delayed, but it was never forgotten. We hope today marks the beginning of the closure.
He was a complete stranger, and for 32 years, the total randomness of his crime had been his most effective shield. Donna Whitlatch found out about the arrest the same way millions of ordinary people receive extraordinary news, on social media. She stood outside the courthouse with tears streaming down her face.
I miss him. I'd give my life for him if I could bring him back. He was pure. He was a good kid. I mean, he never even had a fist fight. He didn't have a parking ticket or nothing. He's never done nothing wrong.
32 years is a long time to wait for the phone to ring with good news. But the next case? That family waited 35 years. And all that time, the killer was living under a completely different name in Arizona.
Major breakthrough in a decades-old cold case out of Placer County. The sheriff's office says a suspect has now been arrested in the 1991 kidnapping and murder of Cindy Weiner.
The Placer County Sheriff's Office announced the arrest of a man wanted in connection with a decades-long cold case.
Cindy Weiner, a Granite Bay woman who was killed back in 1991.
November 25th, 1991. Granite Bay, California. A quiet suburban home. 35-year-old Cindy Weiner vanished. Her 11-month-old baby was found alone in the house, still sitting in a high chair, waiting for a mother who was never coming back. Her car was in the driveway. Her coat was still hanging by the door. There was no sign of a struggle at the entry point. No clear explanation for how or why she was gone. 3 weeks later, her body was discovered 40 miles away in a remote stretch of land outside Forest Hill. She had been strangled. Cindy Weiner was a mother, and whoever had killed her looked at that baby and made the choice to walk away and leave the child alone. For 35 years, the case produced no answers. But investigators never fully let it go. And they had one critical thing working in their favor. DNA, evidence that had been carefully preserved from the original crime scene. In 2026, advanced DNA analysis finally put a name to that evidence. James Lawhead Jr.
Justice after more than 3 decades. A break in a California cold case as police arrest a man living in Arizona accused of killing a mom 35 years ago.
Major breakthrough in a decades-old cold case out of Placer County. The sheriff's office says a suspect has now been arrested in the 1991 kidnapping and murder of Cindy Weiner.
Arguably, this is one of the most heinous, notorious cold cases we have here in Placer County.
He was 30 years old at the time of Cindy Weiner's murder, and his background was deeply alarming. He had only recently been released from prison after serving 11 years of a 19-year sentence for sex crimes involving a child. He had been free for just a matter of months before Cindy Weiner was killed. After the murder, Lawhead simply disappeared. Investigators found no official documentation of his whereabouts after 2005. What they eventually discovered was that he had relocated to Bullhead City, Arizona, living there under a completely fabricated identity. The name he used was Vincent Reynolds, a fake name, a fake life. While Cindy Weiner's family spent 35 years searching for answers, James Lawhead Jr. was walking around free as someone else entirely. On April the 24th, 2026, Lawhead was arrested.
On the way of the roof. Put him on the roof. Put him on the roof. Put your hands up. Put your hands up. Hands up. Keep coming. Keep coming.
wasn't alone in facing consequences. His 71-year-old sister, Terry Lawhead Steele, was simultaneously arrested in South Carolina on an accessory charge. She had spoken with investigators multiple times over the years, including just weeks before the arrest, claiming she hadn't heard from her brother in roughly 20 years. But when investigators dug deeper, they discovered that Lawhead had actually been living in a property she owned. Evidence confirmed the two had stayed in regular contact throughout those years. Placer County Sheriff Wayne Wu called this one of the most notorious and heinous cold cases in the county's recorded history.
Arguably, this is one of the most heinous, notorious cold cases we have here in Placer County. November 25th, 1991, she disappeared from the home. Hours later, her 11-month-old was found still strapped to a high chair.
District Attorney Morgan Geyer, speaking at the press conference, put it plainly.
Our investigators, our prosecutors continue to work on these cases. Simply because the passage of time doesn't mean any importance is diminished. Harness new technology, we commit to good old-fashioned police work, and ultimately apprehended someone responsible for this crime. The legal process will unfold. It's still to be determined when we will see Mr. Lawhead here in Placer County, based on the extradition from Arizona. But we look forward to his arrival here so we can commence prosecution and give some measure of justice to the family and to the community.
September 1986, Montgomery County, Texas. A 16-year-old girl named Deanna Ogg left her home on Porter Road. She was walking to a gas station nearby. A normal errand, less than 2 miles from her front door. She never made it, nearly 2 hours after she left home. Deanna was found in a wooded area near Old Houston Road. She had been beaten, stabbed, alleged misconduct. She was 16 years old. Investigators moved fast. Within months, they had a suspect, a man named Roy Kreiner. He was convicted of sexual misconduct and sentenced to prison. Case closed, or so everyone thought. Roy Kreiner served 10 years in prison. 10 years for a crime he did not commit. In 1997, updated DNA testing proved Kreiner's DNA did not match the evidence. He was exonerated. Released. A decade of his life gone.
This case has seen many chapters. There was originally a suspect arrested who's since been exonerated, but through persistence, through working together, we have identified the person responsible for her death.
In 1986, no one would have ever thought we would be able to do what we can do today.
Advancements in DNA. This case got a fresh look in around 2000 when the DNA exonerated of the murder of At that time, it started. For the last 6 years, Detective List, Ranger Departments have been re-examining that we were able to start doing familial DNA research, genealogy and stuff within the last 10 years. And because of that, we've been able to go back and suspects that we've never been able to do before.
And the real killer, he had been free the entire time. Detectives never closed the file. They went back to the evidence. They used new DNA technology, the same advances that cracked cases across the country in 2025 and 2026. And this time, they got a name.
After nearly 4 decades, investigators say an arrest has been made in a Montgomery County cold case.
This evening, the family of a murdered 16-year-old Montgomery County girl is one step closer to justice 40 years after her tragic death. Authorities today announced an arrest of a local man they say had been hiding in Mexico and hopes this is the final chapter of a long, sad saga.
Bobby Taylor Sr. He was 20 years old when Deanna was killed. He had prior convictions for burglary and assault.
That suspect was out of country in Mexico, where he'd absconded on a previous case after conviction. And when we got him to the Montgomery County Sheriff's Office, we took a known sample from him and had that directly compared to the evidence in this case and conclusively identified him as the suspect.
He had a history of violence that investigators had never connected to this case. And he had been living free for 40 years while an innocent man did his time. But here's what detectives found when they went looking for Bobby Taylor Sr. He was gone. He had fled to Mexico, not because of Deanna Ogg, because of a DWI conviction. He skipped out before sentencing and crossed the border, and he stayed there. For years, maybe decades, he lived in Mexico while Deanna Ogg's family waited, while Roy Kreiner rebuilt his life after a decade in prison, while the case sat open in a file cabinet in Montgomery County, Texas. On April 24, 2026, Bobby Taylor Sr. turned himself into authorities in Mexico on unrelated charges. And when law enforcement ran his information, they found the capital murder warrant waiting for him.
We've identified and arrested Bobby Charles Taylor Sr. for the murder of Deanna Ogg.
He was 60 years old. He is now being held at Montgomery County Jail, charged with capital murder. We find suspects and we hold them accountable. It doesn't matter where they are in this world or what they've done. We will find out. We will bring them to justice. Deanna Ogg was 16 years old. She was walking to a gas station, 2 miles from home. She was a New Caney High School student, and for 40 years, her family watched an innocent man go to prison, get out, and rebuild his life, while the real answer stayed buried. The DNA was always there. The evidence was always there. The technology just wasn't. Until now. The last case in this video may be the most remarkable of all 5. Not because of the length of time involved, not because of the technology used, but because of who helped solve it. Because the people who cracked this one open were not seasoned detectives. They were college students. College students solved a murder that stumped the FBI for 43 years.
Good evening. Tonight, the major breakthrough in a cold case after a Flint teenager's homicide went unsolved for decades. But now the family of Sheri Jo Elliott finally has answers as to what happened to their loved one.
Well, we are diving into a mystery, the disappearance and murder of a 16-year-old girl solved more than 40 years later with the help of college students.
For my opinion, during a meeting, it made me feel so important, and it was just so nice, like being able to have mentorship and collaboration from the detectives. I felt like I learned so much.
November 1983. Flint, Michigan. 16-year-old Sheri Jo Elliott was a part-time babysitter and a student at Carmen High School. She had recently moved to Flint to live with her mother, still finding her footing in a new city, in a new school, building something like a routine. By all accounts, she was shy, she was smart, and she was careful, particularly around people she didn't know. On November 16th, 1983, Sheri Jo Elliott never came home from school. She was last seen standing at a bus stop, waiting for a ride, and then she was simply gone. 4 days later, her body was recovered along a rural road in Blumfield Township. She had been shot multiple times. She had been physically assaulted. She was 16 years old. The investigation went cold, and it stayed cold for 4 full decades. Through changes in technology, in law enforcement leadership, in the world itself.
For nearly 43 years, Sheri Jo Elliott's family has been left wondering who killed the 16-year-old in November of 1983. Thanks to advanced DNA technology, a man has been identified.
Well, new at noon, after more than 40 years, a cold case from a 1983 kidnapping and homicide has been solved.
Michigan State Police officially reopened the case in 2023, equipped with something investigators in 1983 couldn't have imagined. Forensic-grade genome sequencing and modern DNA profiling. They built a detailed suspect profile from biological evidence preserved at the original crime scene. But here is what separates this case from every other case on this list. The investigation didn't move forward on the strength of professional detectives alone. It got critical help from an unexpected source. Students enrolled in Western Michigan University's Cold Case program. These were college students, not career investigators, not forensic veterans. Young people working alongside Michigan State Police detectives, reviewing decades-old evidence, building detailed timelines, and steadily pushing a case forward that had been completely frozen for over 40 years. And the work paid off. All of those combined efforts converged on a single name: Ronnie Collins, a 75-year-old man from Grand Blanc, Michigan. At the time of Sheri Jo's murder in 1983, Collins had been a traveling musician who lived in the same general area. He was already deceased by the time the case was solved. DNA recovered from his autopsy was submitted for testing, and the results were conclusive. It was a definitive match to biological evidence collected from Sheri Jo Elliott in 1983.
Well, Angie, using a DNA analysis and forensic genetic genealogy, police were able to identify a potential suspect in the murder and sexual assault of 16-year-old Sheri Jo Elliott.
Thanks to advanced DNA technology, a man has been identified. Michigan State Police say 75-year-old Ronnie Collins, who lived in Grand Blanc, killed Elliott.
Michigan State Police officially announced that the case was solved. They were explicit in acknowledging that the WMU students had been integral to making that announcement possible. 43 years, a 16-year-old girl who never made it home from school. And the people who finally helped bring her case to a close were barely older than she was on the very day she disappeared. Remember that piece of chewing gum from the beginning? Mitchell Gaff spat it into a cup in January 2024, not knowing what he was doing. It took detectives 4 full decades to get to his front door. 4 decades of families waiting, of evidence sitting sealed in storage rooms, of cases going cold while the world kept moving around them. But every one of these 5 cases proves the same thing. Time does not erase the truth. DNA technology is catching up to killers who thought they were safely beyond its reach. Cold cases are not cold forever. New tools, new databases, relentless investigators, and sometimes a classroom full of college students can drag the past back into the present. If you want more cases like these, hit subscribe. New case files drop every week, and if there's a cold case you think deserves more attention, drop it in the comments.